everyone, welcome to a video that I'm calling Happy Wrists, and I'm doing this because I myself have had wrist issues since I was probably a teenager, and I have quite a few students who are having wrist issues in weight-bearing poses like on all fours and stuff in yoga. And I think it's really important for people to have a lot of tools and options available, because I'm always reminding students that we really shouldn't be experiencing pain in a joint when we're doing something. So if you're on all fours and your wrists are hurting you, that is a sign that you need to try some of these alternatives. You might need to experiment until you find what works. What works for you tomorrow might not work for you 3 weeks from now, but I'm just going to give you a lot of different options of what you can do to hopefully keep your wrist happier if you're in a class where there's any sort of weight bearing going on the hands. And even just on all fours, for some people, that's a lot of weight on the wrists. So first thing I'm going to show you is, and you can do this yourself if you want, maybe have somebody take a picture of it when you do this, or turn your video on and watch yourself on your computer or your phone. And what I'm doing is I'm just bending my elbows, I'm getting my forearms vertical, and then I'm going to pull the backs of my hands down. And as you can see, for me, this is my right hand. See how much flatter this hand is towards the ceiling than this one? This is a wrist that I have a very old injury on. And you can also see that neither one of my hands gets flat to the ceiling. And so what that means is, if you think about when I go to put my hands flat on the floor, my wrists don't not comfortably bend that amount. So you would need 90 degrees. Some people's wrists bend very easily to 90 degrees. I can't show it because my wrists don't do that. So that's one thing to assess for yourself. How much do your wrists bend when they're not weight bearing? They'll always bend a little more when they are weight bearing. But that's just a good gauge to see. Maybe you have some wrist limitations in this direction like I do. So that's one thing to assess for yourself. And then if I take that into an all fours position, so if I come onto all fours and I put my hands flat and I have them underneath my shoulders, I'm now asking my wrist to bend at this 90-degree position. And for some people, this is just too much bend in the wrist and it's uncomfortable. My wrists do okay up to a point here, and then they'll start to get a little cranky. So a couple of things you could try here is, one is just not to have your hands so far back. So if you just move the hands forward a little bit, that's slightly less bend in my wrist. So that's one option, is play around with the placement. Another option is to use fists. So I make a fist and I put my fist on the floor. So now my wrist is straight rather than bent. So using fists is another option that could be tried for wrist discomfort in an all fours position. I'll go over another one that a lot of people never take me up on in classes, even though I know they have wrist pain, which is to put your forearms on blocks. You take the wrist completely out of it. Now, whether you do the blocks flat, this is a little more stable, or medium height, kind of depends on the length of your femurs. So what that looks like is, instead of the hands on the floor, I get my forearms on the block. So there's absolutely no weight on my wrists now at all in my all fours, and I can do whatever is happening here on all fours without any stress at all on the wrists in this particular variation. So that's another one. And then the last one I'll go over would require purchasing something for yourself, and this is called a yoga wedge. And I don't know if you can see, but it's thicker on this end and thinner on this end, so it's got a diagonal to it. And the way you use this is, this would go with the thick side towards you. I like to actually put a little piece of a yoga mat around it so my hands don't slip on it at all.
So I got the thick side towards me, and then my hands go here, and you can see by looking at my hands here that my wrists are at way less of an angle. They're more like this angle with the wedge, because the wedge lifts the heels of the hands. And this would also be beneficial for some people in like a downward facing dog. You can do this with your hands on the wedge, and that really takes some of that stress out of the wrist joint with the wedges. So those are just a few ideas of things you can do to hopefully alleviate any wrist problems going on in your practice. So remember, shouldn't be any wrist pain with whatever you're choosing to do. And I'll put a link at the end of this video to another video that I have about different ways to hold on to a yoga strap. If you're lying on your back using a strap or something, sometimes people's hands and wrists get a little tired there. And so I'll put a link to that at the end of the video. And let's see, is there anything else? I think that's it for now. So I hope you found all of this helpful. Oh, one more thing. Other thing is to assess what sort of surface you're practicing on. So I'm actually on a carpet, but my carpet's on a hard floor, and it's not a thick, squishy kind of carpet. So if you're having wrist issues in your practice, another thing to assess is what sort of practice surface are you using. Some people have really thick mats, and maybe at home they're putting their mat on a thick carpet. And the squishier the surface is that you're practicing on, the more the heel of the hand is going to sink in, and that actually puts more stress on the wrist. So I'll show you what I mean. If I use something softer like a blanket here and put my hands on that, the heel of my hands actually sinks into the blanket, and it's actually exacerbating the wrist flexion issue here if your surface is too soft. So evaluate what sort of mat you have, or where you're placing your hands, or what you're putting your mat on when you're practicing. And if you're using a really soft surface and your wrists are bothering you, if you do any weight bearing, then try a different surface, a different thickness, or get yourself one of these wedges, or try the blocks or something. So please, 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 if you're having wrist pain in your practice, watch this video a few times, kind of try all these movements, and have some of these things in your back pocket if you're at a class and your wrists start to bother you. Okay, hope you found that helpful.